Hi everyone, what's up? Josh here with Alternative Brewing, and as the video title suggests, we're going to be doing a comparison of these three grinders in front of me today, with the Varia VS3 grinder, the Option O Lagom Mini, and the Comandante MK4 Nitro blade. Now, we're going to be doing a blind tasting for espresso and filter coffee. Now, I recently did a review of the Option O Lagom Mini, and out of doing that video, which you can find in the corner of your screen right here, came these two grinders as the best comparisons to the Lagom Mini. So the Varia VS3 grinder, being another compact, single dosing conical burr grinder, found under 650 Aussie dollars, same capacities at 30 grams to the Lagom Mini, and also a similar approach to custom burrs and so on. I have the 38mm Hypernova burrs installed in the Varia VS3 for reference, and now it comes default with the Lagom Mini, the 48mm Moonshine burrs. Now these Moonshine burrs, as some folks have pointed out, have a similar appearance to the Comandante Nitro blade burr. So with the Lagom Mini carrying that title of the best upgrade from a hand grinder, I thought why not? Just throw the Comandante in there for the mix. And the Comandante right now also has that red clicks upgrade to it, so I have better accuracy when dialing in. Now, before we jump straight into brewing all this coffee, which I'm really excited about, I would be ever so grateful if you're enjoying this video and throughout it, that you show your support to our channel and smash that like button and subscribe, as it really does help our channel grow and it allows us to offer more videos just like this. Thanks in advance. Let's get into it. All right. 3 espressos, 3 different grinders, same coffee. And for reference, it was 18 grams in to 36 grams out, and I was aiming for a brew time of around 24 seconds. So some were 23, some were 25, but they all had the same dose and the same yield as well, which is really cool. Now, it wasn't too hard to dial in the grinders. I suppose it took a little bit of time on each just to get the right setting. No more than 3 shots, and that's generally what a barista will work through. So what I'll do is I will taste all 3. It's easier to taste them one at a time, and then come back and then tell you what I'm tasting in each of the cups, and then we'll try and let you know what I think about each of the coffees. Just give them a little stir first. Interesting. All right, interesting. All right, I'm just gonna keep these espressos here in line as the first one I tasted. I moved to the back after I tasted the second one, because that first coffee, definitely a lot of richness to it. Like heavy chocolates, quite a lot of texture to it. Just a nice sweetness, a really nice sweetness to it, but a lot of body and a lot of texture. And some sweetness, not a lot of acidity really, when comparing it to the second cup, which was a little less body and texture, but still quite enjoyable. Much more sweetness, but way more acidity. And I'm not sorry, when I say way more acidity, it's just way more acidity than the first cup I tried. It's not like over the top acidity, but there is definitely some pleasant acidity in there that the first cup didn't have. So I kind of placed that forwards because it was a little bit more balanced. The first cup was definitely more towards the body and texture with a little bit of sweetness, no acidity. This second cup has a little less body, but much more acidity balanced with its sweetness up front. And then this cup, by far the least amount of texture, quite a nice balance of acidity and sweetness up front. Much more lingering flavor with a lot of separation in this last cup that I tried. It would be a real struggle to choose between these 2 cups, which is my favorite. This cup has a real richness to it. It's delicious. These 2 cups just share a little bit more sweetness and acidity up front, as well as having this cup having more texture and body throughout the end of the shot. And this one just has more flavor in general. The sweetness and acidity is the brightest amongst all 3 cups. Doesn't have a lot of body, but it has plenty of flavor that it carries through, it seems. So I wouldn't say this is quite a thin espresso. This has much more viscosity to it, so it does have that lingering richness to it, the second shot. And this third one, just the first one that I tried, sorry, just all body, a lot of texture. Now, people wonder, where my biases are and like how I get to knowing perhaps what these grinders are. To me, without really even knowing what the Lagom specifically tastes like, I'm well versed on how the Comandante and the Varia VS3 make coffee. The Varia VS3 is my go-to in terms of making espresso. It's my daily espresso grinder. So I'm quite familiar with its capabilities and also with the Comandante. I've done several videos with the Comandante now and tasting coffee. So I kind of get that this first coffee that I tried is probably the Comandante's, because a Comandante is just such a profile of rich heaviness, good body and texture. And that's not something you get easily with a hand grinder. A lot of hand grinders are thin espressos, quite a lot of brightness and acidity, whereas with the Comandante, it's just the polar opposite to that. It has that texture and the body to it. So as a hand grinder, it does fantastic as being a separation with hand grinders. That's what I think that espresso is. Now with these two, this third cup, I think is the Varia VS3 because it has that brightness and acidity up front. I've always enjoyed the flavor with the Varia VS3. There is so much flavor and flavor separation, which brings in that clarity of flavors when dialing in with this grinder. And then for the fact that this one doesn't present either side, but it's quite well balanced in the middle, a really nice texture to this coffee, I will say. Like, it has some viscosity that the Varia doesn't give me. And so that's my guess anyway. Let's see how we go. It should be red, white, and clear, if I'm correct. Red, it is. White, it is. And of course, clear. And that honestly presented much clearer than I expected it to. Obviously, they're three very different grinders. So, you know, in terms of kind of comparing, perhaps they'll be closer in flavor profile or one is better than the other. That's not really my intentions, but I really was just wanting to have them side by side just to see, I guess, where the Lagom Mini sits in terms of its flavor profile to this particular coffee, but also how it sits in between comparisons to the Comandante with its similar burr geometry, and with the Varia VS3 because these pretty much are the top conical burr grinders under $700 for espresso. And that brings me to the filter coffee. Let's try these out for filter coffee, because that is also a good consideration when buying a grinder under $700 is whether it makes espresso or not. Let's dive in and do that. All right, taste test time. I've been looking forward to this, and I've matched all of the grind settings across these three grinders as close as possible. I've aimed for between a 600 and 700 micron grind size, and I think I did pretty well. I used this Cruve Brewer, which came in very handy indeed. So thanks to Cruve for sending that one out. And I'm going to now just taste these coffees and see what they all taste like. I'll come back with my findings on each bowl, and then we can discuss perhaps which one sits into which grinder. All right. Excuse me for the dribbles on my chin here. I always find when taste testing on filter, it's a lot harder. I will say it is a much harder to get the difference or the separation between the cups versus espresso. Espresso is so pronounced sometimes. It is so exaggerated in the flavor differences because it's such an intense, concentrated beverage that something with even a slight difference stands out a lot more than in a cup of filter coffee does, definitely. Unless it is like vastly different, right? Or you get, I guess, the grind settings vastly different. But right now, they are all pretty similar. There are some just I'll say there's some slight nuances. It doesn't help me at all guess which grinder was which so much. I do, however, feel like this top cup here is the Varia VS3. Now, when I said I have a lot of experience with the Varia VS3, it's not a heck of a lot of experience with filter coffee. Now, I do the occasional AeroPress or V60 at home with it, but for the majority of my brews, it's espresso focused. However, I do, and I've mentioned this in other comparisons, I do feel like there are similarities in the flavor profiles when you move from espresso to filter coffee. And that goes for all grinders that promise both grinding for espresso and filter coffee. There's generally a similarity between their profiles of filter and espresso. So in saying that, I feel like this bowl here has the most clarity, sweetness, acidity, flavor separation, but it's real thin. Once again, it's real thin. There's not a lot of texture or body to this coffee. As opposed to these two, they're a little bit slicker. There's just a little bit more oils on the tongue, something that kind of grabs hold to the sides of the mouths on these bowls as opposed to this bowl. Now, let's just come back to these bowls. If I've already think this is the Varia, I have no idea which these two are. Oh man, it's so hard. Ugh. I'm gonna switch these. So now the bowls, I feel like, are in line with the grinders. I feel like we've got the Varia, we have the Optiono, and we have the Comandante. Now, my experience with these two bowls just then were that this middle bowl just had a little bit more lingering flavor, a little bit more flavor separation even than the other bowl here, which I thought was the Comandante, which again was just less. They're so close though, they're really close that I'm like, honestly just picking at them in the smallest possible ways. They seem pretty much similar otherwise. Whereas with this bowl here, it kind of stands out. I'm going to just do one more flavor test as they cool down, because bowls, the coffee flavor definitely changes as it cools down. Let's do this one more pass, and then we'll just see what the results are. Yeah, it just confirms that I have no idea which these two bowls are. I really don't. Like, I just tasted them again. I'm like, oh, this one's a little bit brighter. Then I tasted this one. I'm like, oh no, but it's just got a little bit more sweetness to it. And I could swap them around again and just get myself confused. I think it's just about time to guess. Now, I said this was the Varia. I feel like this stands out so much more than the other two bowls. So we should have gone red, white, and clear again. Let's see what this one is. If this is the Varia, it should be the clear. And it is indeed the Varia. There we go. That's cool. Well, that just goes to show in terms of filter coffee, in terms of the flavor profile, it carries over. Man, filter coffee, this was much harder than I thought. Now, like I said in the espresso tasting, the difference between these two was that this just had way more body in it. But I also know that the Comandante is an exceptional filter grinder. Like, it is an exceptional grinder, and it's used by so many people around the world because it makes great filter coffee. And that's just showing here that it's sitting up right against the Lagom Mini in terms of what it's offering. But again, I feel like this just nudged it out a little bit. If I'm right, this is going to be the Lagom Mini, and it'll have a white sticker on it. Nope, it's the red. So that is the Comandante. Now, I switched them originally, and I could have switched them back. Like I said, it was so close between these two for filter coffee. Yeah, I think that's conclusive there. Take away what you will with it. I just will really quickly speak on some of the nuances, I guess, between obviously the Comandante is such a great grinder. There's obviously going to be such little retention on this grinder. You know, you get a little bit of grind stuck up in the around the burrs there, but it's pretty simple to knock down, and everything else is pretty straightforward with a hand grinder, right? But when you move to automatic grinders, things get a little bit more complex. There's a little bit more going on. There's more maintenance that needs to be happening. You need to find more bench space for them. When it comes to these two grinders, I guess I want to say probably one of my biggest gripes with the Lagom Mini. Now, in the review, I've already thrown in what I think are cons, but this is just a regular gripe that I didn't think was a con so much, but just something that's just like strange in its workflow is when you grind out, there is, like, within the burr chamber, there's the sweeper that sweeps out all the grinds from the burr chamber and spits them out. And you're used to hearing the grinds, you're used to hearing the beans go all the way through the burrs, and then that kind of is like that audio cue for you to say, oh, it stopped grinding, and I come back to my grinder or whatever. But with the Lagom Mini, what you need to do is you need to literally let it run for probably, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds, because you hear all the beans pass through the burrs, and essentially they've ground and they're dispersed into the burr chamber. And then there's 3 arms sweeping it out of the burr chamber and out into the dosing cup. And it probably takes around 10, maybe 30 was an over-exaggeration, 10 to 20 seconds to clear out all those grounds out of the burr chamber. So it's not something where you can hear the beans ground and then come back to the grinder and then just turn the grinder off and you think you're going to have your full dose. You really need to run this grinder like extra time over the fact that it's already ground just to get your full dose out. And it kind of goes back to its con that there's no knocker, there's no blower valve on this grinder, and it kind of, you have to wait for all those grounds to be removed out of the chamber. You know, like it's such a simple thing, but it's noticeable if you don't do it. The other thing about the Lagom Mini is it doesn't come with RTD. Now, the Varia VS3 comes with an RTD, and it comes with this blow-off valve as well as default. And I guess coming with RTD means it's going to relieve some of the static. You don't get a lot of static with the Lagom Mini, but you still get, I guess, depending on where you are in the world or what humidity is like in your brewing space, RTD is nice to have. RTD is very nice to have. So having a little spray bottle to spray on those beans to grind them out, it just minimizes some of that static when it comes out of the chute, and then it allows the beans to, the grinds to settle down immediately in the dosing cup. So that's something I do enjoy with the Varia VS3. Also this blow-off valve, like I mentioned with the Lagom, when you're just kind of waiting for all those grinds to come out. Whereas once you hear it going through the burrs on the Varia, you can kind of attend to it and just touch on the blow-off valve to get those grinds out of the grinds chamber as quick as possible. I feel like I do that enough. Just tapping it like this while it's in the chamber, while the grinds are in the chamber, just eliminates that. Now, however, what that does when using the Varia is it does create a little bit of mess. I will say that the Varia, in using this blow-off valve, is a little bit more messy than the Lagom Mini. So you will find a lot more grinds around this base here than with the Lagom Mini. And there's the trade-off there. So with the Lagom Mini, you just kind of have to wait for the burr chamber to evacuate all those grounds as the sweeper sweeps them out 10, 20, 30 seconds after you've heard it stop grinding. And that should get the majority of your grounds out with little retention, which is great. It probably does a great job at that. Sometimes I feel like you have to give it a couple of knocks, but with the Varia, you want to RTD, you want to give it a little tap, then you're going to get all those grinds out with, again, very little retention. So it requires those sorts of methods, and it is a little messy, but I'm really happy with the espresso that it makes. And that's my feedback, I guess, on those two grinders. So there's my final thoughts on these three grinders and taste comparison across espresso and filter coffee. Thank you so much for watching the end of this video. Please, obviously, if you have any of your own thoughts or experiences on these grinders or tasting, add them in the comment section down below. I love to hear your thoughts, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care. It's cleanup time.